everybody. Welcome to another interactive session with 10 counts. And today we have got the brave Bantamweight world champion, Shorty Jose Torres, with us. First of all, glad that you joined with us. And thank you so much for taking out some time. So, you recently had a big fight, big win. You're now the brave FC world champion. What does it feel like, holding the belt after such a tough fight?
Um, Honestly, it feels exactly the same. It doesn't change anything for me. It's another fight, just so happened to be for the belt. I'm happy to say I'm champion once again. Now in a different promotion, another high level promotion, and I'm very happy with it. And I'm hoping to, keep on defending the belt and, gain more belts as my career continues. It's been 5 years since I've been part of Brave. And I also commentated the very first Brave event in 2016, so it's been a long time coming. And I'm happy to say I'm a champion. I'm happy to say that, everyone a part of Brave, KHK, and just everyone around the world supporting me has been amazing, and I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what's next.
So, you had your fight with Kofi Debele cancelled twice before you guys actually, locked hands inside the cage. So, was it frustrating that the fight was getting cancelled? And, like, how did the fight turn out and happened in reality?
Um, I mean, for the fans, it's exactly what what they want. Oh, canceled fights, canceled fights. Finally, the fight happens. It's a 5 round war back and forth. It's exactly what everyone could ask for. As an audience member, as a fighter, it's very difficult because you're putting your body and really your life on the line because you're training every single day. In the very first camp in March, I ended up breaking one of my toes. In the second camp in April, I remember getting dropped in practice. And still, trying to push through. And then coming to August, I ended up getting a really, really bad cut over my eye. So I'm always getting beat up. I'm always getting injured, and I'm literally pushing myself against some of the best in the world. I was facing giants on purpose because there's not many people the size of Nkosi and the belly at the bantamweight division. So I'm going with featherweights, lightweights, going with guys that I know are better than me for a reason. And I'm getting beat up. And the hardest part about that is I don't do my training camps at home. So I'm away from my family, I'm away from my friends, I'm away from a social life or a life in general. And it's very difficult, especially when you spend so much money for training camps to travel, this, that, and then you find out weeks before that your fight is canceled. And there's nothing you can do about it. So for me, I know Brave really wanted this fight. I'm happy the fight happened. Happy I got the win. I definitely wish it would have happened a little differently. I was definitely a little too respectful and nice in the fight. But the fact is, I got the win, I got the belt, and finally time passed and I got the job done.
So as you said, you had to deal with a lot of adversaries before the fight. Like you had your bad cut, which is also posted on the social page of Brave FC, and a lot of people could see it. Now, did you expect the fight to be this close, or did anything about Kosi Debele surprise you at any point in the fight?
Um, I didn't expect the fight to be that close, and that I 100% believe is my fault. I had my goals in my head, and for some reason, I was like, let's test him. Let's see how this goes. Let's see how good he really is. And I kind of threw my goals out the window, so I made the fight a lot harder than what it should have been. And it was a very, very good fight. I mean, I think Nkosi's a very good fighter. I do believe he's the future. It's just right now I'm the present, and he's the one thing he did extremely well is he kept his distance well, and that was with the teep kick. And I mean, his hands didn't really affect me. There were a lot of pop shots, but he did keep his distance with it. But his distance control and the way he threw his teep kicks or his push kicks from the back leg, because he usually for me, I know obviously what his dominant leg is. I know what side he's gonna throw on, but he never got his footing. He never waited to get his balance to throw that kick. He was like, "Oh, Shorty's coming, kick, kick. Doesn't matter, just kick, just throw it." And even though majority of them didn't land, they're annoying and they're keeping me away. And I'm like, "Damn it, come on! I'm trying to get in. I'm trying to get in." And by the time I did get in, he's moving out of the way. So it did take me a little while to figure out his rhythm, to get inside, to create a clinch, and to finally take him down. It's very hard to throw a man that long, so I'm happy I was able to set it up, and it took me a lot longer than I wanted to. Again, I think I was being too nice and too respectful. But overall, I think the biggest thing his biggest strength was his distance control.
Now, a lot of people, were saying that this fight could have been the result could have gone into a reverse direction. Now, do you believe that you deserve the split decision win, or do you think like it could have been an anonymous decision, or like what's your reaction to people claiming that the decision that was officially announced could have been something else. Like, what's your honest reaction to it?
Um, it's crazy because after the fight, I'm like, all right, cool, I won. Like, I'm not worried about it. I know I lost the first round. Second round was a little closer, but I was like, okay, for sure, 1, 3, 4, 5. I'm not worried about it. I put him in danger multiple times, given I couldn't land the strikes I wanted to because he's so much longer than me and kept his distance. And by the time I got inside, he clinched. But my knees were more effective. I had the takedowns. I had submission attempts. I put him in danger multiple times, and I think he landed a total of like actually landed where I felt the knee on my chin, which it's crazy that the knee didn't land. It kind of like sliced me, if that makes sense. It wasn't like, bumping into me and where it's like, oh my gosh, it was more of like it just missed me. It's kind of like a nice elbow that slashes you instead of that full impact. And I didn't even know I was bleeding. I was like, oh, I'm cut. When did oh the knee? Okay, all right. But the knee, there was one teep kick that landed. I was like, oh, okay, that one, that one was a good one. And I think and there was two jabs that he landed. That was definitely my fault for not moving my head. And I was like, okay. But I think after that, there wasn't any effective strikes. So when it comes to just the dominance in the fight and putting him in danger, it was me. He did a lot of pop shots that landed on my guard, and he was very active, and that's fine. But I technically was the aggressor. I was the one moving forward. I'm the one that brought the fight down to the ground. I put him in danger, so I wasn't worried about it. I was very surprised it was a split decision, but at the end of the day, I wasn't worried about it again. And even still, if I ever were to fight him again, I wouldn't be worried about fighting him again. I already know what he does, and I'm definitely better the second time around. But in general, man, I didn't think it was a split, but fans think what they think, and the judges, do their job. My job is just to fight, and I'm just happy I won.
So, like as you said, after the like he really overpowered you in the first round. But what really impressed me that how you came back in the later rounds and how you even after taking that cut, even after taking some good shots, you really came back in a strong way. So how did you resurrect yourself into that fight? Like what was the turning point where you felt like no, I just need to go and get this guy beaten?
I usually start slow and I wanted to see what he had. I like to adapt. I'm usually again too nice and I'm never too aggressive to like start off fast. I kind of want to get hit a couple times and those teeps definitely woke me up a little bit. But then once I saw blood, I was like, okay, I have to pick it up. And I remember in between every single round, I would look at my family that was in the corner, my team, and I would go like yes or no, like who did I win it? No, and they would tell me to like so I was like, okay, cool, I lost the first round. Like I always say, if it's like I lost. That's my mindset. I'm losing. And I'm a person that likes to come back from the race. So after that second round, I started to pick it up a little more. And then he started to kind of chant to himself, like, I'm gonna be champion. I'm gonna be champion. I was like, oh, you're tired. You are trying to convince yourself to push forward and not quit on yourself, which I admire. I'm not at all like, shaming him for that. I think it's super acknowledgeable. But for me, I just or admirable, and I acknowledge it. But for me, I knew he was getting tired, and I just had to push the pace. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I believe that was just a signal for you to know that he is tired.
Yeah, well, also in Bogota, it was I can't remember how many kilometers, like 8,600 kilometers high. It's very it's extremely high. It's a 2 mile high city, and it just to be able to like I remember when I first got there, getting out of the plane, I'm like, why am I tired carrying my bags? And I was just like, oh, I forgot. And so I knew he was gonna be a little tired from that, which 100% helped. But for me, I knew my conditioning, no matter what, even if I didn't get there early, was gonna win the day. And that's definitely I get better and stronger as the fight goes on. So and that showed really in the later rounds.
So no matter what people say, you really deserve the win and you got the title. You're now the brave bantamweight world champion. So and you're the one who's you're entitled to call the shots, no matter what people say. So would you entertain a rematch against Kosa in your first title defense, or would you want to explore into other names and fighters too?
For me, when it comes to the people's opinion, it doesn't really matter. I have the belt with me. People can say whatever, and no matter even if I won by knockout, some people might say it's lucky. If I won by submission, oh, it was lucky. So for me, it doesn't matter. I have the belt around my waist, and I got paid as a champion because of it. But when it comes to doing a rematch, I'm not a fan of rematches just because it was for the vacant belt. Now, if you were champion and I won a very close split decision, kind of like the Alexander Volkanovski Max Holloway first fight, then sure, okay, cool. I would love to be like, dude, come on in. I get it. You were a dominant champ, or you were champion before. You earned it. I don't see why not. And it's a fan entertaining fight. With this one, the only reason I would fight him again is one, if Brave told me, I'd be like, you know what, man, I don't care. I'm champion. I'm fighting anyways. And I want to stay active this year, and I definitely want one more fight. But two, it's more of an ego thing. I hate really close fights. I like showing dominance, and when people second guess what I do, it makes me, it makes me upset. Obviously, it makes me train harder, and go, cool, whoever I fight next, whether it's Nkosi or, someone new, which I would always prefer to fight someone new. I don't want to beat the same guy multiple times. It doesn't look good for me. I'm 12-1 now. If I were to fight Nkosi 6-2, I'm not saying it's a bad record, but I have to, in a sense, record wise, go down to fight him. And I'm also, in a sense, fighting a challenger twice when he's already lost once. So for me, I would like to fight someone new, but if Brave 100% wants me to fight him again, then it is what it is. I know there's a lot of controversy for it. I know fan attendance would be crazy just because Nkosi's a fan favorite. I'm a fan favorite. And just in general, when you have bad publicity on anything, it's good publicity. So for me, I don't I wouldn't like to do it, but 100% it does make sense when it comes to promoting and for Brave. So if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm a champion. I don't call people out. I just, fight whoever's in front of me.
So another fighter, Ali Guliev, is a lot of people are talking about him. A lot of people say that he's a good fighter. Now since you're the champion and sitting in the top of the division, like, how do you see him as a top rising fighter or as a potential opponent?
And this is no disrespect to him. I have to look at his fights. I don't recall any of his fights. I just haven't seen. But I know Brave ended up putting out a post like, who should Shorty fight next? And he was one of them. Valley Morad. I believe there's another South African. And Kosi again. And maybe there was one more. But for me, again, I'm the champion. I don't want to be that guy calling down, in a sense, people below me and go, hey, you deserve to fight me, or you should fight me. I'm just like, I'm not one of those guys that's about hype and this and that, where I'm like, oh, I want to fight the most popular guy and this and that. I want to fight the most talented guy, and I want to fight the guy who's number one. So if it's Nkosi again, awesome. If it's Ali, awesome. If it's Valley Morad or the other South African, amazing. But for me, I fight for I fight whoever Brave tells me to fight, and I respect the decision.
Since you're the Bantamweight world champion in the Brave FC, you recently saw that Sean O'Malley, grabbed the Bantamweight title in the UFC, and a lot of people were surprised. Now, what was your reaction when you saw Aljamain Sterling get knocked out by Sean O'Malley? Did you expect that, or was it really surprising for you too?
Um, I wouldn't say I didn't expect that, because Sean O'Malley keeps really good distance control, and Aljo is just not a stand-up fighter. He's really, really bad at entering. If you don't know how to keep your distance, he's gonna enter very well. Corey Sandhagen likes to spin, and that's awesome, but Aljamain Sterling was able to grab him and just immediately take him down. He didn't want to play that stand-up game. But when you have Sugar Sean O'Malley, who keeps his distance very well, who has a very wide stance, who doesn't stand straight up, who has very good counter strikes and does a lot of feints, which gets a wrestler or grappler kind of like, oh, what's gonna happen? What's gonna happen? Especially for Aljo being knocked out by Marlon Moraes with the knee from the head kick. Actually, how I got cut. It's one of those things where if you put your head down, you're nervous. And O'Malley keeps really good distance control. He throws random strikes, throws a lot of feints. So I believe it was one of those that definitely was a very good possibility. Just no one expected that. I thought Aljo was kind of gonna do what he did to Corey Sandhagen, except that he was gonna get hit possibly once or twice really quick, but just rush in and not let his swallow his pride and be like, cool, I'm gonna take a couple hits, but I'm gonna rush in and take him down, compared to, let's see how this goes. And I also think Aljo took Sugar Sean O'Malley a little. I don't think he respected his talent enough when it came to the feet. And I think that's what paid him the price, because you can tell in between the round he was kind of like, I can't get in. What's happening? Oh man, I can't take this guy down. Oh, I need to really force a shot. And that's what he did. And he put himself in a very bad position because of it. And he got knocked out. So congrats to Sugar Sean. I'm not a fan of how fast he's moved up in the division. I get he's very popular. He already has 1 million followers. on Instagram and his podcast, and he does a lot of stuff on the side. And again, I'm not at all shaming him. I'm just not a fan of people moving up because of how popular they are, how fast he did. But and there's that big but is he went the distance with former champ Petryan, and now he's knocked out the champion. So no matter what even I say, he's the champ, and he showed how good he really is. Whether people think it's a fluke or not, he's a champ, and that's all that matters. Same thing with my fights. Like, no matter what you say, I have the belt around my waist, and it's around it until somebody finally actually beats me.
Now we recently saw, like, obviously UFC is one of the biggest promotion in the world when it comes to MMA, but we recently see so now this has been happening since a lot of years, but recently two of the fighters also went against the promotion and kind of bashed them. Like Chris Whitman recently bashed the UFC for putting him into the prelims of UFC 292, and like he said that he is a former world champion and he deserved to be in the main card. Obviously, he didn't like it, and also Wonderboy Stephen Thompson, he disclosed that he didn't get payment for his weight cut loss in the UFC and kind of, went against the UFC. And Dana White also said that there's nothing like Dana White's privilege that actually exists in the real world. So you recently said that you're not a fan of how fast Sean O'Malley has moved up. So being an ex-fighter from the promotion, do you really agree to the statement that Dana White privilege doesn't exist, or do you think that it does?
Oh, it 100% does. If Dana White privilege didn't exist, that whole flyweight division would have been cut immediately. Once a person would have been lost, they would have been cut. I lost, I got cut. Jared Brooks lost, or excuse me, Jared Brooks won, his contract ended, he got cut. Justice Scoggins lost, he got cut. Every other or there was, I know, Mark De La Rosa, oh, there's another guy. I can't remember his freaking name, but there's a lot of guys who were able to finish their contract, which is awesome. I know they were very close to Mick Maynard, and that's, politically, it's just I think there's a conflict of interest there, but some people were able to finish their contract. Tim Elliott, man, I'm really forgetting this Hawaiian's name, but there's a lot of guys that were able to finish their contract and or were cut from their contract and then brought back. Or even I know Brandon Moreno, when he was, he lost, they were like, oh, we're gonna cut him. And he's like, and they told him, they go, we'll re-sign you because we like you. And this is more just out of courtesy, but you're gonna get paid way less because we don't like this division, but we're gonna pay you, we're still gonna pay you, we're just gonna pay you way less, kind of almost what you started at. And then we'll see what happens to the division. He took the gamble, and obviously it worked out really well in his favor. Years later, if you look at Pantoja, he kind of had to take the same thing, and he was working Uber, before he became champion. It's like, what? That's not respectful at all. You look at Dustin Ortiz, which fought part of Brave. I remember he was making close to six figures. I know he would make six figures if he won, and he was number 3 at the time. And then he lost to Joseph Benavidez, who fought for the title right after that. And then they go, hey, Dustin, we'll pay you your entry level contract if you want to stay in the UFC. If not, we'll let you go. And he's like, no, I'm gonna go part of Brave because they're gonna respect me, pay me more. So it's like, I 100% believe that Dana White privilege does exist. At least from my experience, I got treated very, very unfairly. And I believe in the whole boxing thing. You fight whoever's next. So that's why I said if Nkosi's next, awesome. If Ali's next, awesome. If Ali Morad's next, awesome. I fight whoever's next. I don't fight whoever's most popular. UFC is kind of following the whole boxing gimmick of the YouTubers fights, where it's like we fight whoever's popular and this and that. But I miss the era of the Four Kings, where it's like Sugar Ray Leonard versus Marvin Hagler, and Marvin Hagler versus all these different guys, Roberto Duran, and or you look at Manny Pacquiao literally fighting all of the champions. I respect that. I love that. I appreciate that. And that's what I admire and love. And that's what I want to do as well. That's why I became a double weight champion my last promotion, because I wanted to be like Manny Pacquiao and be a multiple weight division champion, So when it comes to that, I don't like what the UFC is doing, but the hardest part is that the most popular promotion, and especially in the States, every American knows only the UFC. A lot of them are like, oh, you're in Bellator, you could be the Bellator champion. And Bellator is a very big promotion too. I think they're number 2 in the world, right behind UFC when it comes to popularity. And people are like, oh, you finally become champion. So when are you going to the UFC? And it's like, what? Dude, they make almost like 5 times more money in Bellator, but people always think UFC. So people don't know the behind the scenes. And I think Dana White privilege 100% does exist.
like as you mentioned about Bellator MMA, PFL MMA is also really doing a great job. They have recently signed Francis Ngannou, ex-champion. They are literally signing all the world champion boxers like Shavana Marcel, Amanda Serrano, Clarissa Shields, Jake Paul. Do you really think that the monopoly of the UFC is going to break down in the next 10 years, or do you think that UFC has gone to a certain level where nobody can match it, no matter which promotion arises?
Well, I think right now the UFC is being sued for being a monopoly. Mark Hunt is part of it, and all these other fighters, Kung Lee, and they've been suing them for over, I think, 10 years now about being a monopoly. And it's very true. Whatever decision the UFC makes, usually for the most part, other promotions follow. So it's hard for promotions to create their own things and then other promotions follow. But when UFC does it, everyone kind of follows because that's the staple. That's the one that started it all, at least worldwide. And that's amazing. Congrats to the UFC. But the UFC is like the McDonald's of MMA. If UFC does 2 for 5 deal or 2 for whatever deal, the other promotions are going to follow that same type of deal because they want to compete or they want to follow suit and see that they can compare with them. I think with PFL buying Bellator and them kind of merging, I'm excited to see what happens next because PFL I think is going to be a very, very big promotion. With Bellator, I don't know how they're going to bring that together exactly, but I would love to see. I would personally, I would love to see them do that tournament, the regular season stuff, the Grand Prix, and then on the side have those big fights, Francis Ngannou versus whoever, or if somebody wants to do a boxing fight, or Jake Paul says he'll fight Nate Diaz in the PFL. It's like those are cool fights, and then you have the season, the actual season for $1 million on that side. I think that's amazing. But when you have Sugar Sean O'Malley and Aljamain Sterling as the main event, the rest of the card was kind of like it's good. It wasn't amazing, but it's good. And I think even the Sugar Sean O'Malley Cheeto fight, I'm not excited for. And that's just because I think Cheeto did a very good job against Sugar Sean, and I think he's going to do a very good job the second fight as well. So when it comes to fights like that, I just don't see it as exciting. But when it comes to Volkanovski, Max Holloway 5, or 4, if that happens, awesome. That would be great because they deserve that. You see, Islam Makhachev versus Oliveira too. It's like, yeah, those guys deserve to fight each other because they're still number one. It's number one versus number one. That's great. Or champ versus number one. I don't like seeing number 7 versus the champion. It doesn't make sense to me. But I get the whole fan service, but make the fan service and co-main event. And for Chris Weidman, I think business wise, and this is hard to say for Chris Weidman, but I get it business wise, and again, it's nothing personal. Is he's an older fighter? He's been out for a couple years. He had he had a small run as champion, and that's great. We're never ever going to deny that. He beat Anderson Silva twice. He beat Lyoto Machida again. A very good reign as champion, but when it comes to being remembered and when it comes to bringing fans in the stadium, being on the main card, I get maybe he should have opened up the main card, but being highlighted as the main fight for the prelims is just as good because you still show people worldwide for free who you are. And if you win that fight and you return dominantly, then yeah, for sure, next fight is on the main card, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But being on the main card immediately after kind of like, oh man, is he going to actually perform well? Because people were telling him he should retire. I think him being main event in the prelims made a lot of sense.
Now, my last question to you would be, since you're like when you were cut off from the UFC, you had a 1-1 record. Obviously, just one loss and you unfairly got cut off. Now you're a world champion at Brave. And you've seen Khamzat Chimaev come up from Brave and even dominate in the UFC. So if you get another chance to, move back to the UFC, would you entertain that opportunity, or would you love to explore into some other promotions rather than getting into the UFC?
That's a hard question because they did treat me very unfairly. It's kind of like going back to a bad relationship. It's like, oh, you were great, but man, you really treated me extremely bad, and I can't forget that. Plus, if I were ever to go back to the UFC, man, I don't care who I fight, that I don't care about. But it's like you have to pay me very, very well. It's like you got to pay for what's that court thing when they go to court? It's like, oh, you got to pay for my troubles and sadness and this and that. Is like you got to pay for that too, So if I were ever to go back to the UFC, I would love to fight a lot of those guys. So for me, it's entertaining. So I definitely would entertain it. But I'd have to get paid very well to go back because what I make now with Brave, I'm very, very happy. I'm very comfortable. Obviously, as any person, I would always love more. But the fact is I want to be a champion worldwide. So if I end up, defending this belt and there's no other guys a part of Brave that makes sense to fight, maybe I'll bump up to 45 or excuse me, the featherweight, 66 kg and fight the champion there, or if because I really do appreciate Brave and I know they've done a lot for me and I want to do something where maybe I know they've signed dual promotional contracts for some of the fighters. Maybe I can do what Bellator and Ryzen do, where it's like champion versus champion. So I would love to fight, the ONE FC champion. I would love to fight, the PFL champ, or whatever the case may be. So for me, I'm just trying to do as much as possible. And I want to do what DJ did when he left the UFC. He goes, what's the point of going back to promotion that I've already been so dominant for? I want to be able to see if I am one of the best in the world, so I have to fight the best in the world. And look at him in ONE FC beating Adriano Moraes. But last thing is, you look at all the fighters that were cut from the UFC. John Lineker, myself, Jared Brooks. I'm trying to think of other champions that were in the flyweight division, but you look at all of us. Jared Brooks is the strawweight champion in ONE FC. I'm the bantamweight champion in Brave. Lineker, I believe, is the bantamweight champion in ONE FC. It's like, man, you look at Kyoji Horiguchi. He was the bantamweight champ at both Ryzen and Bellator. You look at Sergio Pettis. He was, or now is, the Bellator champion. So when you look at that, it's like, man, UFC let go of a lot of really, really good, talented guys. DJ now the flyweight champion in ONE FC. It's like, man, they let go of a lot of really good guys, and I think that was their mistake. And if they want us back, they're gonna have to pay us really well to do so.
Thank you for taking us so much time and joining with us. You're the world champion right now, Brave. Enjoy your reign as a champion and hope we will see you back in action very soon. Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate it. Thank you so much.